My name is Jamila Talbot, and I am an herbalist. I'm a Reiki practitioner and a sound healer.
Could you tell me a little bit about your own mental health journey?
Yeah, sure. I was the nervous kid. I was the kid who, thought too much. I was the kid who was a little bit too dramatic, who had really big feelings. And I started having these episodes when I was, I think, around 10, where when I would get into crowds, my body would heat up. I would get really clammy. I would feel really nervous, and my stomach would turn over, and I would end up sometimes feeling like I was going to pass out. And so my parents took me to the doctor. And, the doctor's like, well, let's check her heart and let's make sure it's not this. And ultimately, what they came back with was, well, she's having panic attacks. And so my parents, and I just want to be clear when I say this, I love my parents. My parents did the best that they could for me with the information that was available in the 80s and the 90s, the attitudes that we had in the 80s and 90s. But they kind of just said, oh, well, like, stop doing that. Like, it's not a medical issue. There's nothing for us to do
Right.
um, for you physically. So, like, just stop. And so it took me until I was way into my adulthood to realize that I had generalized anxiety. And it was one of those things, like, I know for other people who've been on a similar journey, um, you go backwards, right? So the diagnosis makes sense. And then you're like, oh, all of these things that I normalized, first of all, I'm finding out that other people didn't do, that other people did it. And I was like, oh, you guys didn't like feel like you were gonna pass out every time you were in a crowd. Oh, you guys didn't have to like give yourself a whole like, conversation bit by bit. You didn't have to like role play out possible conversations before going into like social functions. You don't do that. That's that's how I lived for years. And also what took part of what took such a long time for me to realize what was happening or what had been happening to me was because my anxiety did not manifest the way that in the 90s, and in the early aughts, we engage with anxiety. Because I would have fits of rage. So I would get overwhelmed, and I was self-medicating to a point through stimulants. So I was drinking a lot of coffee. I was, back in the early aughts, I was smoking a pack a day, and it was really to try to just like regulate myself. But I didn't have the language to say, like, I am trying to cope right now, and these are my ways of coping. Um, I am trying to stem this anger. I'm overwhelmed right now. And so I'm going to scream, or I'm going to yell at you, or I'm going to, have this energetic explosion. And then I'm going to feel better. But then that also comes with guilt and shame. And then it was this like constant cycle. So, what actually was the turning point for me was that I had postpartum depression after my first child. And again, me being the overachiever that I am, my depression didn't look like depression. Because again, the information that I had gotten around postpartum depression was sadness. Oh, you feel sad, you feel unmotivated. That's not how mine manifested. I had invasive thoughts. I had fantasies about, uh, I'm gonna leave because I'm gonna leave my daughter with my mother because my daughter is gonna be better off. She's gonna get better care if I'm not here. I would have these fantasies about dropping her, and not, I just want to be clear, like, being a new parent, you're nervous, right? You have this like, they give you this tiny fragile
Yeah.
human being, and then they send you out into the world, and they're like, basically, good luck, right? So there's a certain amount of anxiety that's normal for new parenting, but this was beyond that. This was to the point, and just in case anybody else is listening to this who is having similar symptoms, this was to the point where it was beyond rational. where I was worried about things that were beyond just rational missteps of parenting and being a human. And so I kind of toughed it out and went through it because I was like, I'm not depressed. And then it wasn't until my third child and I had another episode where I was like, okay, this is something. And lucky for me, I was part of a mom's group and somebody had come in and spoken at great length about postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis and the different ways that PPD shows up for people. And that's when I was like, okay, now I can put language to these things that I am dealing with. And now I need to start kind of diving deeper and figuring out how to best support my mental health and naming it without shame and naming it in a way that was like, this is how my brain works, right? This is just the way that my brain is. And it doesn't make me a terrible person. It doesn't impact me. It doesn't impact my value. But it does mean that I need to be self-aware and make some changes for myself and for my family and for my friends, just so that I can be able to live in balance. So that's led to a lot of the things that I do now, and really what we discussed, which is the passion for mental health and the realization that generationally we don't talk about it enough. We don't have enough languaging around it. We don't have enough of an understanding of what it looks like and how it can look different culturally, how it can look different based on who you are as a person, based on some other things that are going on. So that led me to what I do now.
Yeah, what inspired you to create your business?
So the start of my business actually had nothing to do with mental health. It had everything to do with my mother had cancer. And while she was going through her treatments, she was getting all this advice that was holistic and other things that while she was doing chemo, she could take these other things to boost her energy. And so fast forward, a couple of years after that, I took a supplement that relating to mental health. I took the supplement for something completely different, but I was like, wait a minute. I feel so grounded right now. I feel so calm. And then I always make this running joke where I'm like, do other people just live this way? Are you guys out here just like being calm and relaxed? Because I don't know that. I don't know how to be this way. And so I looked up the supplement and it was just an herbal supplement. It was, a plant that actually grows local. It's gotu kola. And, I started kind of getting this bug around like, oh, there are other ways to kind of manage not just my mental health, but my physical health as well. And I got really curious about it. And then I started to realize how little people knew about simple things that you can do to help balance yourself. And I just want to be very clear about this, not as a means of not getting traditional or allopathic care, but as a means of just being able to take care of ourselves and not constantly be in crisis. And so I got my herbal training. I started an herbal business. And then a couple of years ago, after I'd been an herbalist for maybe 7 years, I started to hear more and more about sound and how vibration and vibrational healing really impacts people. And the more I got into that, the more I started to realize, again, the impact that it had on me, the impact that it was having on my family, and how little people actually understood the science behind it, because I'm very science driven, which sounds weird for what I do, right? Like seems like those things don't go together. But for me, everything that I do, I can explain the science behind it. But I can also tell you, like, sometimes it's just the placebo, sometimes it's the habit. my business is approachable. I use that word because I really have a passion for helping people understand how they can be part of their healing journey, how they can be part of making themselves feel better, getting themselves grounded, but also having really supportive and loving conversations about when is the time to seek professional help, which I think is always, right? I think everybody
Yeah.
should be going to therapy. I think therapy is amazing. Like, let's all go to therapy. I think it should just be a thing that, like, once you turn a certain age, we should all just have a therapist. But having those conversations in a loving way, but also saying, go to therapy, but also get your sound healing, but also take supplements that make you feel better, and really approaching life from this really holistic, loving, heart-centered place. And then being able to teach from that as well.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you do in your business?
Um, so my favorite thing is I teach. So I teach classes around creating or demystifying a lot of stuff. Like that's my primary goal is, I'll give you an example. So I teach classes about tarot. And tarot cards are like this thing that people are either like they love them or they hate them or they're scary or there's all this like conversation around them. But for me, it's like, well, tarot is a great way to interrogate yourself, right? To use these prompts, they're ready-made prompts to say, when I see this card, this is how I feel. Why do I feel that way? Let me ask myself some questions. Let me journal. Let me just have this conversation with me and all of the things that make me, and maybe get to some memories that I haven't really thought about. Think about some patterns that I have, some things that I do, and how that's impacting myself and my quality of life and my loved ones. Um, so that's probably my favorite aspect of it. But I also do sound healing, sound bath immersions, both private and public, where it's basically a form of meditation where people come, they bring their mats, they bring their pillows and blankets, like it looks like a slumber party, which I adore. People come, they lay down, and I play a variety of different tones and different instruments, which help your brain, and I'm going to get into like the nerdy science, but only for a second, help your brain sink into a deeper brainwave. So I always say, on a good day, if I can get you to the delta where you're deeply relaxed, that's like I considered I've done my job. But if I can get you into theta, which is the actual self-healing brainwave, then like I'm a success for the rest of the year. But getting people to relax, to have deep relaxation, to shed and feel better, in this high-paced life that we're living, where busyness is key and trying to get people, like, we're all stressed out, but we don't know how to de-stress ourselves. Giving people the opportunity to de-stress without having to know how to do anything, right? Without having to come in with any knowledge at all. All you have to do is lay down and you will wake up and you'll feel brand new. So that's a big part of my public work. And then I also offer Reiki, which is just twofold, which is universal energy, right? It's again another tool to help prompt someone to heal themselves, but it also gives us time to be quiet, which we don't love as a culture.
No, no.
We don't. It is a time to be still. It is a time for people to be introspective, but it also gives an opportunity for a lot of times for my clients connection, because we just talk. I've got you still. You're not going anywhere for an hour. Let's talk about what's going on. How are you feeling today? How are you? And what I found with Reiki, which I did not expect, because that's not where I was going with my practice, is that a lot of times it gives people an opportunity to talk about things in a safe environment, when they're vulnerable because they're laying still and they're feeling this like calm energy going through them, they're vulnerable and they feel safe. And then sometimes they're able to express things that they typically don't express. And sometimes it's a great opportunity for me to say, have you considered therapy? Have you considered, and so where it relates back to mental health in all of these things with my practice is having that sense of community for folks and having these environments where they're feeling safe and relaxed is a wonderful opportunity for them to, for one, experience safety and relaxation, which most people don't know what to do with it when they first have it. They're like, why do I feel like a lot of clients go to sleep and then they feel bad that they go to sleep. And I'm like, it's okay. You needed to go to sleep. You're not losing anything from going to sleep. But when we feel safe and when we feel calm, we sleep. So, and then being able to just have these open doors for me to say, have you considered, this, have you considered, and also sharing my own experiences and saying, yeah, you see this confident, grounded, like calm person, but that's the result of therapy. That's the result of practices. That's the result of being honest with myself about how my brain works and who I am, and pursuing ways to be in balance and to love myself in this way. So I don't know if I actually answered your question there, but
You did, plus some.
plus,
But uh how does it feel for you that you see your clients succeed and feel better?
um, it's there's a certain healing aspect for myself in this, right? Because like I'm selfish. I love to watch people win. I also, facilitate, which is called peer-to-peer counseling, these healing circles where people just come and talk about things that they're going through, and we talk about with each other, things that unite us in our experience. But seeing people, so I've been doing that for 3 years, and it's been really a consistent group of people for 3 years. And year over year, watching people, you know, coming to group and saying, hey, I did this thing that I never thought I could do, or hey, I finally got into therapy, or I addressed this issue that I was having and I let it go and I feel, wow, like a new person. There's an aspect of it that is healing for me because I go back to that childhood self who did not have the support that she needed. And I'm like, hey, I'm providing opportunities for people to have what we didn't have until much later. For people to address things that would have been swept under the carpet otherwise. So there's the concept of the wounded healer. Like, we are ourselves, kind of overcoming and healing ourselves, but also, promoting healing in others. And so there is this feedback, this healing feedback that happens when I watch people come to realizations, or I watch them win, or I watch them feel relaxed, or sometimes cry because they're like, I am realizing how much I don't relax, or I'm realizing how much I'm exhausted, and now I'm starting to prioritize taking care of myself. Like, there is profound healing in that for me, just being able to facilitate that for others.
What are some of the things you've learned from your kids?
Oh my God. Let me tell you something. I just want to say, for the record, for anybody who's listening to this who does not have kids, having children and being conscious, what I would say a conscious parent, and I don't mean that as the tag conscious parenting, but like being in a parenting relationship where you are not just defaulting to what you learned as in your childhood, right? You're not just doing what your parents did, but you're trying to really push the next generation to a more healed state. That is 100% flying the plane while you build it. I say to my kids, a lot of the healing that I've done around my childhood has been because my kids have said something, done something. I have a child who is very much me, 13-year-old me. And I have to look at 13-year-old me and say, for a while in our relationship, I was distant because she was activating for me. Like, she was able to be the person I wasn't able to be. She was able to say the things and express the things that I was never able to express. And it heightened me a lot because I was like, well, that's something I would have gotten in trouble for. That's something that would have been ignored. And we got her into therapy a few years ago, around some things. And I went into therapy at the same time because I needed to learn how to create a safe and healing environment for this kid who has the same mental, who needs the same level of mental support that I did not get. And so that was bringing up all of this stuff. So, part of what I've learned from my kids is that, like, the requirement of parenting is not to be perfect, right? And like, I don't know what I'm doing ever, and I'm just guessing. And I tell them that now. I'm like, look, I'm just guessing, right? I don't know. And having that level of honesty for myself and for my kids has been transformational. And them just being like, great, thank you for being honest. Thank you. And sort of also building in grace and being like, yeah, okay, I just learned today that this is what I should do, or I just learned, or I'm just addressing this thing, or you said this thing to me and now I'm thinking about it and I can't stop thinking about it, or, and being able to be challenged by my kids in that way causes me to grow. And not to be in one of the most important things is not being insulted by the fact that my kids call me out of my crap all the time. So much, like, they just say stuff and I'm like, but you're right, I gotta think about that now. So I see my kids are constantly teaching me. They're constantly teaching me. They're constantly encouraging me to be a better person. And I used to use that line that I think a lot of parents use, where I'm being a better person for my kids. That's nonsense. I'm being a better person for myself. And my kids benefit from that commitment to me being a better person for me. So yeah, like, I could do an entire like thing about how much my kids have taught me. But I will say, like, again, for anybody who's starting this journey, go into it with humility and go into it not needing to be the token authority figure. And your kids will give you profound wisdom. They really will. And they'll give you joy, and they'll give you challenge, and they'll kick your ass. Excuse me, I don't know if I can curse. They'll kick
Yeah,
your
go
behind.
for it.
Yeah, they will totally beat you up on an emotional level, but it will challenge you to be better for yourself. So, like, do it, just go for it.
So where do you want to see your business, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
Um, so one of the things that's happening since we brought up my kids is that my kids are interested in, being part of my business. It's not something that I promote within them, or it's not an expectation that I have of them. But, mom plays with instruments all day, and, and I work primarily out of my home. So my kids are kind of living in this bubble of like constant healing and playfulness, and which is another thing that I encourage, is like, let's be playful and let's
Yeah.
have a good time and experiment. And so there's being more and more interest around them wanting to do this. So where I see my business is, of course, growing. Like, who doesn't want to grow, right? But that's not really my goal. My goal is I really want to reach folks. And I really want to reach folks and create more communities around how do we encourage safety with each other? How do we create safety? Hopefully doing some mentorship around creating safety in the workplace, creating mental health services and connections and community in the workplace, and really using my business to shift how people view and value things like attending to our mental health, attending to our spiritual selves, relaxing and resting, and really seeking healing within ourselves. So I do want to grow. I do want to have something that I can eventually hand off to my kids, whoever wants it. You know, they can pass the ball into that new generation. But also having more people experience what I think can be a really transformational form of healing. So I don't have like, I know that a lot of businesses are like, I want to have like,
Yeah.
they have these concrete like goals. I wish I did, right? Because every time I have set a concrete goal for myself around what my business looks like, it becomes something completely different within 2 years. Um, so, so I want to say that most of my goals are surrounding how I make people feel and how can I make more people feel the way that I've made people feel so far. And that's the most I can say for my 5-year plan. For my 5-year plan.